Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Page Media. I am your host, T. Taylor. This is our Behind the Book Experts Every Author Needs Conversation series, where we connect self published authors with the professionals who help bring books to life and into the hands of readers. Today, we're joined by Ashley D. Shepard, a self publishing consultant and a book marketing strategist. Ashley helps coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs transform their expertise into books that build their brand through profitable publishing. She has sold more than 5,000 books and is the author of Profitable Publishing with Pre-orders, where she teaches authors how to build momentum before their books ever launch. Hi, Ashley. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you are welcome. Now, for those who are meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you from education into helping self-publish and indie authors.
Yeah, so I started out as an author myself. I wrote a guided journal after having my oldest son right before the pandemic started. And so at that stage, it was okay, this is your first child. You're kind of trapped in the house with this newborn, and let's write a book. That obviously doesn't make sense linearly in a linear fashion. But there was a lot going on outside with like George Floyd's murder and just civil unrest, and also this new surprise bug. And as a first time mom, you're already pretty much not a hypochondriac, but you're already very much aware of all the different things that could harm your child.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I was just going through a lot of different feelings and emotions and was thinking, I need to get these out of my head. I had always done journaling throughout the years, even since I want to say even like fourth or fifth grade. I've always been somebody who journals. And so I saw a challenge that was like write your own book and write your own journal challenge. And so I participated in that and then would be up typing my guided questions for my journal in between feedings with my youngest. And I use that kind of as like I have to be up anyway, so let me let me make this productive. And so then that book came out, and then I was already in the process of writing a different book at that time, the Daniel Fast 21 Day Food and Faith Journal. It's a devotional, and it goes through the Daniel Fast, which is a change in eating habits, and also combining that with understanding that Christ should be your center, not food. And so,
Mm-hmm.
with that, I was already writing that book. I was already in the process of publishing that book with someone, and then the book that actually came out first was placed on my heart just because I needed it. And so I started to reach out to different moms and say, okay, if you had a book like this, if you had something that could have helped you to kind of navigate your first year with your child, what would you want to see in it? And then gave them some of my guided questions, and then they gave feedback. And so
Okay.
then that became a very iterative process of before I even knew about really reaching out to your ideal audience, I
Mm-hmm.
was already kind of doing it,
Okay.
and it just made sense. And then also from the research I had seen, it's said to really know who your reader is. And so that was something that helped me release the mom guided journal. And then 3 months later, the Daniel Fast book came out. And within that short period of time, I also was working full time and am still working full time at this current moment in education. And it became something where I was like, oh, okay, this is another outlet I can do. I taught literacy and then went on to be a literacy coach for a couple years as well. And so I already was in the vein of giving people advice and feedback. But then once people saw, oh, like you're having success with your book. So the mom book, it came out and I was able to be profitable before that book was finished. So I made
Okay.
$1,400 in pre-orders in 6 weeks with that book. And to me, that was like, okay, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because you always hear like, oh, authors never make any money, or
Right.
it's just talked down upon. But in that instance, I needed to make money because I had a 9 month old when the book came out. When I started, he was 6 months old,
Okay.
and I had just had a $5,000 pay cut from work from maternity leave. And then also the economy was being kind of funny with the pandemic. And so I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I can't use household money for this. Like I have to make money from this
Right.
book before it is done. And so through that and through dipping my toe into some of the principles in the business world of pre-selling, it's just a standard practice to pre-sell courses, to pre-sell programs before it's done and get people to pay money for it. And so and I had done a little bit of work with pre-selling meals because before this, I also still have this business, but I had a business that focused on mealtime strategies for moms. And so I did meal prep for families and they would order it in advance. I would prep the meals and
Okay.
they would either pick them up or we deliver them. And so I was familiar with like pre-selling things and getting people to buy them.
Right.
However, for a book, that's a much longer waiting time. And so
Right.
I had to really research and talk to people. And I worked with a mentor as well to see, okay, how can I make this work? Because like I need to get this book out because I need this book. I needed the healing. But then also as I shared it with other first time moms and even second and third time moms, they really shared that, okay, this is something I wish I would have had when my kid was younger. And so I was
Mm.
like, I have to get this out. And so through that process, like I said, I was able to do the 1,406 weeks of pre-orders. That's how long my pre-order was open. And then with the Daniel Fast book, since it was already kind of in the background operating with the publisher that I was working with at the time, then that one I did $800 in 10 days because I had a shorter runway. But then once I added it onto Amazon, I was able to do $1,000 in the first month
Oh,
from Amazon
wow.
sales. And so, and of course, got the bestseller statuses and things like that. But I just saw this like, okay, this is a really viable thing that I can do. And
Right.
also, being a teacher and people reaching out and saying, hey, like I saw you did this with your books. Can you help me? Then it became more of a, okay, well, all right, let's see. Can I help you? It makes sense to me. I understand how to do it. And so then I started working with clients shortly after that. Within the first year of me becoming an author, I started working with clients and opened up my own publishing consultancy to be able to not only self-publish, but also to support with marketing because I was finding that many authors were so focused on the book that they didn't really think about the marketing until the point of exhaustion.
Right.
And to do that, it's like, okay, you spent all this time writing your book, spent all this time publishing your book. By the time you even think about marketing it, if you're waiting, you're like, I don't have any more energy to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and or a lot of them didn't want to do it. And so for me, marketing is more fun because it's an area you can be really creative in. For me, publishing, as long as you do the steps, you're going to end up with a book. Like as long as you follow this set series of steps,
Right.
a book is going to be born. But with marketing, there's so many different other opportunities to be creative. And I know many authors are like, well, I can be creative in my books. And so that is true. You can have a creative structure in your book. But to me, marketing is where I don't people don't say this anymore, but it's where the money resides. Like if you know how to market and sell your book, then it becomes where you're not this starving artist. You're not someone who is feeling like, oh, spend this $5, $10 on my or no, let me take a step back. Spend this $10 to $20 on my book where I'm gonna get $5 to $10 or maybe even $2 or $3, which is typically the royalties that most authors see when they
Right.
just focus on those books, and some get less than that. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, I am not someone who I'm not saying that I wouldn't necessarily write a book for free. I would. However, to me, it's a lot more fun when you get paid while you're doing it. And so that's why I focus on pre-orders and marketing and infusing that into the publishing process.
Now you mentioned a literacy coach. What's the difference between a book coach and a literacy coach?
Oh, so I was speaking for my 9 to 5 work. So I
Oh,
taught for
okay.
10 years and then was promoted to being a literacy coach. So I supervised 30 to 35 teachers and gave them instructional strategies to use in their classrooms with their students.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Okay. Awesome. Neat. Okay. Well, since you work with coaches, consultants, speakers, and service providers, what
Mhm.
unique opportunities do these authors have that traditional authors sometimes overlook?
Yeah, so if you are a coach, a consultant, a service provider, a speaker, you typically have something outside of your book that you're selling, whether it's you coming to speak, whether it's you coming to do some type of corporate training, or maybe you have a course yourself that you're trying to sell, or a service that you want people to participate in. And so you already have the mindset of like, I'm this, but I'm also this. So your
Mm-hmm.
goal is probably not to be a full-time author. Now, not saying you would turn down a book deal if it was for the right amount of money, but you're typically not looking to make and being an author your career. You
Mm-hmm.
are a multi-passionate person. You're probably a multi-hyphenate. You're a coach, comma, speaker, comma, author. Like, and that shifts your focus because it means you're more likely to be profit driven and or to see in the sense of what's going to be your bottom line. So is this thing that I do, is this going to support my overall goals of reaching this metric? Is it going to be something where I can track this KPI, this key performance indicator of, okay, I did this and this let me know I'm ready to accelerate to this thing. And
Mm,
it's different from what I see from people who just want to be authors. And I did specifically focus on just authors at the beginning of my work. And I was realizing that really all the people that I've been hired or that have hired me are business owners. They are speakers, they're coaches, they're consultants, they're
mm-hmm.
service providers. And so I just wasn't calling them that. I was calling out to authors. And so within the past year or two, I've had to make that shift of like, no, like I'm working with people who are doing more than just being an author.
Right.
I'm not saying that in a derogatory way to be like, oh, you're just an author, because being an author is an amazing feat.
It is.
And it's a lot. Not
It is.
everybody is an author. Like there's a very small percentage of people that actually decide to write and publish a book and do it successfully.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was finding is that, at least from my perspective, the people that I was working with or people I was asking to come and work with me, they were so focused on the books being the high point, like your book being the maximum capacity of whatever it is that you do
Okay.
versus a book being a supplemental thing. And so you asked me about what are some opportunities that those folks have. So as a speaker, you have the opportunity to package your book alongside your speaking. So instead of just saying, okay, I'll speak for this fee and I'm going to include this many books, or I'm going to give you an offer where if you purchase this many books for your attendees, then I will speak for free. So you have a little bit of leverage and positioning that you can use that way. And then that helps you to be in the forefront of people's minds, because after your speech, unless someone has decided to follow you on social media or engage with you some other way, they may forget about you. They may not necessarily have you top of mind. However, if you also have a book that they're getting in their hands, that gives you opportunities to, okay, take pictures with me in the book,
Yeah.
sign my book. Like, I want to come talk to you about this thing that you discussed. Or it also elevates the authority in their mind of someone has taken the time to go through this super long, well, not, let me not say that. Someone has taken the time to go through this super arduous process, this lengthy process in some parts of writing a book. They've taken the
Mm-hmm.
time to package their expertise, shrink it down into something that I can read and something I can go back to and refer to again and again. And that elevates their understanding. You look at them differently. You see, oh, okay, well,
Right.
you wrote a book about this, so you must know something.
Right.
And just from the perspective of hopefully not necessarily using AI to write your book, I don't mean that. I mean in the sense of they took the time, they have the experience of working with different people in that industry, of getting clients results possibly,
Mm-hmm.
of sharing case studies of different things that they've done. And it just puts them on a different pedestal. And let me go back to the AI point briefly, because we know sound bites exist in the society. So I'm not saying that AI doesn't have a place in writing your book. However, I do caution folks from using AI to solely write your book. I
Right.
caution from using it to be as the point of the content is coming from AI, because then that means it's not really your ideas. And depending upon where you live, you can also run into issues with copyright. And now within the last couple of years, Amazon's added a feature to actually ask how much AI is being used in your book, like what level of AI was used in the creation of
Interesting.
the book. Yeah. So when you go to do the upload process, it'll ask, is it AI assisted or like entirely AI? And so just something to be mindful of. And then also, if you think about it, if you're putting your best ideas or your best content into AI, there's a potential that AI can spit that back out and share it with other people that are doing the same thing to try to build their things out. And so just something to be mindful of. And I know they have the toggle where you can say, don't share this, but honestly, I'm not sure that I trust that with 100% fidelity. So, but you do have additional points of leverage when you write an authority book that actually showcases your understanding of a topic, that supports your readers, and helps you to attract clients. So, for example, if you're a service provider, reading a book is actually a great way to qualify somebody before they might get on a sales call with you. Because if someone spent the time and energy to sit down, or even listening to your book is another great way for people to consume it if they're
Mm-hmm.
on the go. if they've taken the time to read your book either with their eyes or read it with their ears, then they are more likely to understand you. They're more likely to understand how you operate. They're more likely to want to work with you because typically people don't finish books they don't like. And if they
Right.
are getting to the point of where they've completed the book, then they have a higher chance of liking you. And then also they have a higher chance of wanting to work closer with you if the result that your book shows them is something that helps them get a transformation. And you've proven yourself in the book if it's written the right way, because I won't say that every book does this, but if you've structured it the right way and you've structured it in a way that supports them and gets them some wins even before they finish, then you've elevated their opinion of you and you've made it so that they can trust you.
Okay. That's so in a way it gives adds to the credibility of what they're doing or what they're putting out.
Yeah, so it does because I mean, in general, books have now become like a business card. And I know people typically are not. I mean, it depends where you are. It depends on the audience. Some people would prefer to have a business card. Other people are like, just digitally share your information.
Yeah.
But when it comes to having a book, even if they don't read it, it just shifts their perspective of you because it's like,
Hmm.
okay, you know your stuff, you know what you're talking about, you've taken the time to actually sit down and focus on one thing at a time
Right.
for even if a brief period. You've taken some time, you've made an investment because
Hmm.
creating a book is an investment. It's an
It
investment of your
is.
time, your energy, your talent, your money. So this person has taken the time and energy to actually invest in this thing so that I can learn something from it. And it's something where it's not it's not something that's become, what is the word I'm looking for? It's not something that's become so commonplace that people don't think it's a great thing anymore. Like you don't really see people say, oh, books are canceled, or where people say like courses are not effective anymore, which they're still effective, but people say, oh, the course industry is dead, the coaching industry is dead. No one's saying the book industry is dead. Like people are still reading books, they're still
Right.
consuming written content. Like you think about Substack, that's had a huge resurgence or a huge trajectory. You think about blogs, like I know for a long time people think, oh, blogs are dead. Recipes are blogs. Like people go and
That's
steadily look
true.
for those things and they read them. Like they have not gone anywhere. You just decided that you didn't care about them anymore,
That's true.
and you've shifted somewhere else. You've gone to social media. But now we see that there's a pendulum swing back to written media because platforms like Threads are thriving. And
Hmm.
and even like for me personally, my long form posts on Facebook, they do better than some of my posts with pictures. And so people still read. I know there is a literacy crisis, but people still read. I'll just say
They do.
people are
They
still
really
reading.
do.
They're not going to read the whole thing all the time, but some people do. And
Hmm.
the people that you are wanting to work with, especially if they're clients, they're going to be the ones that are either reading in its entirety or they're going to read for the high points because they know that they're looking for certain things to tell whether or not you're a scammer, to tell whether or not you know your stuff.
Hmm.
And if you think about even like higher education, you're still required to read. Like if you're getting your undergrad, you're getting your associates, your master's, your doctorate, you are required to read and write. And so the people that you might be trying to attract to you, if you're wanting them to be a part of your coaching program or your course or whatever mastermind, whatever it is that you're working on, they're still going to have those same skills and use those same skills. And so a book is like a taste test to see, okay, do I actually like this person's personality? Do I like their principles and their styles? Am I able to get a breakthrough from just reading this? And so if your book is structured in the right way, people are able to basically have a sample of you, like at the mall, the Chinese food restaurants, handing out samples. They've been
Right.
doing it for all of my life, and I'm almost 40. So they've like the same process. Oh, would you like to try some? Oh, yeah, sure, I'll try some. And then because it works. So a book
It
is a way for
does.
people to sample you without actually having to sign up for a higher ticket program or package. And that's on the front end. On the back end, it could be that your book is something that supports your existing clients and customers. So maybe you're seeing that people are going through your coaching program and there are certain concepts that they maybe are not grasping from the video or audio material, depending upon the format of your program, or it's maybe so much information because some of these programs are everything I've ever done is just in a portal and you get access to the portal. And for some people, depending upon your learning style or your learning preference, that can be overwhelming. So if there's certain things that are like your fundamental frameworks, your fundamental structures, putting that into a book is a lot easier to say, okay, all right, class, let's all flip to page 59. These are some things that I want you to know because tonight we're going to be talking about this. And there's science behind having something tangibly in your hand versus looking at a screen in terms of the level of learning and understanding that you have. Same thing when it comes to like writing something versus typing something. Your brain was created for tangible, touching things, scripting things out. And so a book helps them to do that. And so I love when people send me pictures of my book, and I see it back there behind you on the stack. On the top of the stack, yeah.
Yes, it is.
I love when people send me copies of my book, Profitable Publishing Pre-orders, and they've like written all in the margins, and they have all these like tabs, and mine looks like that too. I have the tabs on mine, but um,
Oh,
and so
cool.
I love when people send me that. Oops, sorry, I love when people send me that because it shows me that they're actually interacting with the text and
Hmm.
digging back into my literacy background. That means you're understanding the concept when you are
Right.
interacting with the text, when you are underlining, highlighting, circling, making notes. That shows that you are understanding the process. And if people are able to better understand your process and understand your frameworks better, then they're more likely to get results with the strategies that you teach because they understand them on a deep level. That means they're more likely to implement them. And then if they need extra support, then that would be where they might reach out to you, or they might follow the structure that you've provided in your book of book a call with me or sign up for this thing or get your freebie. So you're
Hmm.
guiding them in a process without being pushy or overbearing, but more so like, hey, I get it. I understand what it is. I know your problem. Here's a solution. If you need support with that, here's how to find it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm almost, I would say I'm a little bit more than halfway through. Just
Okay.
throwing that out there.
Okay. Yeah. Good. No problem. No pressure.
But you touched on this earlier about some of the misconceptions. So we know there are many moving parts to publishing a book, as you mentioned. What are some of the biggest misconceptions you see new authors have before they even begin?
Yeah, so one big misconception is the idea that one publishing route is better than the other for every book. So I'll just go over them briefly. So you have traditional publishing, that's typically where one of the larger publishing houses, they call them the big five, where they typically are going to do deals with like famous people or people who have stepped out in their industry in a way that they have a large audience.
Hmm.
And for that, you're going to have to typically show that you have a pretty big following in order to get that type of deal because the publisher is looking for a return on their investment. And so they
Okay.
might give you a large advance. When I say large, that's relative. They might give you an advance at the beginning. Of course, the bigger your audience, possibly the bigger your advance. Um, but they're going to give you a lump sum at the beginning, and then they're expecting you to write the book, or they might stretch out your lump sum. So they might give you like some throughout the process. And with that, you typically are not going to have your creative control. You are going to have to give up some of that creative freedom depending upon what your book is about and what the agreement is that they're okay with. Of course, that depends on your contract, your agent, your publisher. You are also going to have to give a percentage to your agent if you have an agent of that advance as well. And then on the opposite end is self-publishing. And so this is a route that many authors choose because the bigger publishers are not always able to offer publishing deals to the broader audience, but also
Hmm.
there are some cases of not necessarily discrimination, but exclusionary aspects of lack of representation from some of the publishers. And so obviously everybody can't be published by a traditional publisher.
Right.
And so you see the opposite end of the spectrum where people are doing things themselves, either entirely, start to finish, meaning that they are formatting their book, they are making sure the cover design is done, and everything in between. And that has its pros and cons too, because you're doing everything. So by the time you get the book out, you're exhausted and
Hmm.
you've poured out every single ounce of your energy, your money, and your time. And then you have a bunch of options in between. And so, kind of in the midway point is where you find hybrid publishers where they basically will provide some of the upfront costs, but then the author also is able to keep some of their creative control. And this all really depends on the deal with the publisher. But the option that I provide for my clients is kind of a mix of the two, but not in a hybrid way. So in terms of they keep their creative control, they keep their rights and royalties, they're making the maximum amount per book. But my team and I are basically project managing and executing their publishing process for them. So we do the things that a traditional publisher would do in terms of handling the grunt work. However, they get to keep the direction, the control. We give advice, we give advisory, we give consulting, and share what makes sense in the industry as well as what makes sense for them.
Okay.
And then the final say is with the author in terms of the book cover, the structural design of the book, in terms of things like that. Of course, within reason, obviously. We want to make sure it's a professional professional book that can compete with a traditionally published book. But they don't have to worry about, okay, well, I'm only making a few cents or a few dollars per book. I get to keep the maximum amount I can make. Or my publisher has vetoed what I wanted to do for the cover. In cases like that, I'm gonna make suggestions to them to let them know, okay, this is how you can get the best outcome. If at the end of the day you've decided that you want to go left or whatever, okay, then that's your choice. But I'm gonna advise you and guide you, and also make sure that you get to the finish line with that accountability, because that seems to be some of the biggest some of the biggest hurdles that I see is that people start writing a book, they have all this energy, and then they stop because they get overwhelmed with the publishing
Mm-hmm.
and the marketing process, or they underestimate how much work it actually is, or they second guess themselves because they're the only ones reading the book and they're not getting additional advice or additional feedback from qualified
Right.
individuals. I say qualified because everybody's not qualified to advise you on your book.
Right.
um, and so it's a blend of consulting and coaching, because at the end of the day, some of us, not some of all of us, need a little bit of push to get over the finish line, and also reminders that like you're capable and you're qualified to do this. However, you might need support to get that done. And so another, you asked me for misconceptions that people have. And so I would say that they should do it all themselves just because they don't get a traditional publishing deal, and not understanding that there's a gray area. Everything is not black and white. There's gray in the middle. So maybe you need support from someone who is going to um, project manage the process for you. Maybe you need support with editing, which I highly, highly recommend hiring an editor. Please do not try to edit your book yourself. Even if you have a background in editing, please hire somebody. I have a background as someone who has read probably thousands of essays at this point and edited them and given feedback. But I don't do my own editing because there's a certain blindsidedness that you have when it's your
Mm-hmm.
own work. And hiring a professional, and we include editors in our packages, but we pair you with someone who is a good fit for your genre. Hiring someone who's an editor, it gives you an outside look. It gives you an objective look if it's a good editor. And it gives you the ability to say, okay, what I thought in my head is actually making sense to someone else. It's not
Okay.
just me
Right.
thinking this. And so thinking you have to do everything yourself or you have to get a traditional publishing deal, there's options in between. And then also assuming that you should wait until your book is done before you start your marketing. When I say, I know you asked me about publishing, but marketing is really embedded into publishing. I was actually on the phone with a potential client earlier today, and she's in the process of writing her book. And she said one of the best things that I shared with her is that you essentially start your marketing before your book is done because it helps to know who you're writing your book for. And what I find often is that authors wait until their book is out and they say, okay, I've got my book in my hand, or I'm about to press publish. Now, how do I find my readers? At that point, you've missed quite a few integral steps that would make your marketing and your selling process infinitely easier, because you wrote this book without getting feedback from people who would be the people that are buying it.
Mm.
You are not necessarily having that understanding of what those people want. What do those people fear? What do those people think is going to happen next? What are the desires of those folks? When you have that information at the beginning, it lets you know, should I include this chapter? Should I include this framework? Should I take this out because this isn't going to be relevant? This example that I'm adding, is this gonna hit? Are people gonna understand what I'm talking about?
Mm.
Like for example, on my podcast a couple weeks ago, I did an episode and I was referring to a Family Matters with Steve Urkel and Stefan Urkel. And so I use that because I'm like, my people are gonna know what that means because they've seen Family Matters. They're old enough to understand
Yes.
and they still remember. So like that's a very specific it's a very specific example, and it illustrated whatever the point was I was trying to make about your transformation. And how people take you more seriously when you are showing up in a different way. Like with Urkel, people thought he was a jokester. Like he wasn't
Right.
trying to be funny. I mean, he was trying to be funny, but it was just like a nuisance versus like Stefan Urkel. Girls are like flocking towards him, trying to like,
Right.
and the guy's going to be cool like him. And so using that reference helped because I know that people know that scenario. When
Mm-hmm.
you wait until your book is already out and you haven't had a chance to actually embed those types of things throughout your book or having to be able to understand what your readers need, then it means that your book may not be a good fit for them. And that can affect sales, it can affect reviews,
Yeah.
it can affect your release, your launch. And I think about it specifically with reviews because yes, people may buy your book at first, just like, oh, you came out with a book, I want to support you, I'll buy it. But are they recommending it to people?
Mm.
Are people coming back and buying a copy for XYZ who needs to get this information? And when that's not happening, it's partially because you either are targeting the wrong audience or you are writing something without getting that feedback from the audience to make sure it's relevant to them.
Okay. So in that instance, if someone is writing a book, in your opinion, at the time that at what point do you feel like it's the right time for them to reach out to a book coach or get the process started? Because you mentioned earlier that people get exhausted most of the time halfway through. And yes, I
Mhm.
understand. So at what point do you say, would you recommend that somebody reach out to, someone as yourself or a book coach or what have you?
Yeah, so I'm someone who thinks that it's important to know yourself,
Hmm.
and there's not really a blanket answer for everybody because everybody's different. But I will say there's a couple points. So if you are at the stage of where you have an idea for your book, you kind of know who it's for, so you have some general idea of, okay, this is for people who are in this age group, this stage of their life, and it's going to help them do XYZ. And then you have a couple stories you think you could probably include. You have somewhat of a framework or a structure. If you absolutely have a framework or a structure, then okay, we can work with that. If you don't, but you at least know that you've gotten some type of results for people and you followed a loose set of steps, that's kind of a good point. However, that seems really, really early for some folks. They're like, well, I don't have anything. Okay, perfect. That's fine. We can start with what you have. Because
Right.
if you're, especially if you're a coach, consultant, speaker, or service provider, you are getting people results if you are in business. Otherwise, you probably are not in business. Otherwise, you're probably declining. So if you know that I work with these types of people, I get them this result, or they told me my speech was really helpful, it helped them to do XYZ, you have some loose understanding of what works for people, and probably, let me not say loose, you probably have a stronger understanding than you assume for helping people. It's just not maybe written out in a certain way, or it's not packaged in a way that you feel like makes the most sense to other people to be able to explain it. However, I'm going to push back on that and say you probably do, especially those speakers, because you typically are going to have to use some of the same structures in a speech as you
Hmm.
would in a book. Um, and then also if you're a podcaster, that's a gold mine, honestly, of resources you can use, pulling transcriptions from your episodes to be able to use and rework and reframe to fit inside of a book. So if you have any type of video content where you've delivered some type of speaking, I would say it's time to come on down. If you have a set of results that you're able to achieve using some type of framework or some type of structure where you get somebody from point A to point B, I would say it's time to start. If you are someone who is spending so much time in your head and you're not
Mm.
taking action to move from that Google Doc with that blinking cursor that's just blank, and you're like, I just need to know where to start, then it might be time for you then. Because
Right.
some people, like if you're like me, I like to know that I'm doing things right. And so some people like to say, okay, this is what I need to do. So step one, do this. Step two, do this. If you're like that, then yes, you might need to start. You do need to start because you're going to sit in inaction for so long that you're never going to do the work because you think that you're doing it wrong. So I know that's not like a nice, neat answer,
Oh,
but
it's perfect.
okay. Because
Yeah,
there
I
really
mean,
isn't.
it makes sense. Like you said, everyone's situation is not the same. So, but yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, do you think that the same strategy applies to someone who's writing like a self-help book or a book like what yours is? Does that same strategy apply to fiction writers?
So I don't have any fiction books. However, obviously I've written fiction before. So in terms of the strategy, in terms of structuring your book, is the structure the same
Hmm.
for fiction books as it is for nonfiction books? Is what you're asking?
Right. So, basically, with the same thought process, like everything that you just mentioned, would the same thought process be the same, for someone who has a fiction book as opposed to like a how to book?
hmm Yeah, so no, it would be a different process in terms of the steps you would take. However, I still would advise to just write as much as you can
Okay.
and then think about organizing it later because what I find from I'm in spaces and I'm a not a mentor. I'm a what is the word I'm looking for? Moderator, not mentor. I'm a moderator in groups that have fiction and nonfiction authors. But the things that I see is that the overthinking is what gets in people's way, and they're thinking like you have to have everything figured out start to finish, and that's just not the case. You have to
Okay.
start taking action. So I would say write, and then don't worry about editing while you're writing it because that can really bog you down.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me personally, track word I don't track word counts as a metric of like, oh, I'm almost at my goal. And I do find that a lot of fiction authors track word count.
Yeah, I
And
noticed
I'm
that
like,
too.
well, I've taken out this section, so now I'm down 5,000 words. So now does it mean I have less progress than I did
Right.
before?
Right.
No, it means that this didn't need to go here and or
Mm-hmm.
this needs to be cleaned up. And so I will say, like I said, I don't necessarily work with fiction authors, especially adult fiction authors. I do work with children's fiction authors for marketing, but from a writing standpoint, the structure is different, but the mindset of just writing to me is the same.
Okay. All right. So we touched on this again a little bit earlier. Many authors believe that publishing the book is the finish line. How do you help them shift their thinking from simply publishing a book to building an author business?
Yeah, so publishing your book is really just the beginning, and I know some are disappointed to hear that because when you think about it, your book is, like we said, a business card. It's also, in some cases, the entry point to your ecosystem in some cases. So, for example, somebody might read your book and actually they might not even finish your book. They might get your book, see it, and say, "Oh, I want to follow with that. I want to follow them. I want to connect with them. I want to see what else they have going on." And in marketing, you hear the concept that people need 7 to 20 touch points to get to know you or to buy from you, essentially. And so your book can be one of those touch points, but it's a touch point that really accelerates that process. And so when it comes to thinking that, I'm sorry, can we redo this question?
Yeah, definitely.
Can you
Um,
ask me the question one more time?
yeah, so how do you help authors shift their thinking from simply publishing a book to building an author business?
Okay, yeah. So when it comes to your book, realizing that your book is just the beginning and it is a entry point to your brand, then it helps you to understand that like your book is not the final destination. And I don't mean Final Destination, Millennials like the movie, but it's not the final stop. It is something that actually helps you branch out into other things because your book could turn into a group coaching program. Your book could turn into a course. Your book could turn into speaking. There's people who take a chapter of their book and use that for trainings. And that could look like in corporate or master classes, depending upon how your book is structured. And so when you think about it like that, it's important to understand that your book doesn't have to just be, oh, here, buy my book and that's it.
Right.
It's more so my book might give you a taste of what's going on, and it depends on how you structure it. So, and I know I keep saying that, but it really depends on your goals. Your book could be something where you are supporting people already inside of your group programs or inside of your group containers or individual containers. I do, for example, VIP days where I work with clients one on one and we structure their pre order. So during that time, just like when you were in, if you went to college, where the professor is like, okay, I need you to read these sections. That's what we're doing. We're reading these sections. And then when we come back and we have a conversation, or if you're preparing in advance, when you come and you have a conversation, it helps it to be a deeper level of understanding. People are able to process things better when they've had time to sit and marinate with them. And so your book can be something where you are using it as a resource for your people as opposed to sending them outside of your brand. um, we see it with college professors all the time of, oh, you need to buy the updated copy of this book, of this textbook, because
Hmm.
I added more stuff in it. Lord knows if they add more stuff in it, but
Right.
we see it. And so it becomes an additional resource for you, not only to use with people who you're actually working with, but also as a marketing aspect for you. Because if someone reads your book, then that's an entry point to you. And then if someone recommends your book, then it's also like it's doing the marketing for you. And for example, what I always tell folks is that you want people to read, recommend, and review your book. You want them to actually read it
Mm.
because people don't always read the books they buy or the books they get. We know. And there's actually a Japanese concept about this of just like collecting books because you like collecting books as opposed to reading them. It's I can't remember the pronunciation, but it's kind of like Sudoku, but a slightly different pronunciation. And then for the recommending it, you want people to tell other people about it. And there's a quote that I love by Rob Fitzpatrick, and I say it so often, but I'm gonna mess up the order of the quote. But basically, the point of book marketing is to not have to do it anymore.
Okay.
So if your book marketing is effective, your book becomes this thing that sells itself because people are talking about it, people are recommending it, leaving reviews, and it's kind of where if you think about if you have kids, where they're kind of just like, all right, I've done what I needed to do with you. You might come back, but I've done what I've
Right.
needed to do with you. And now
Right.
you're gonna fly on your own, little baby bird leaving the nest. You might come back to the nest, that's fine. But I've supported you to the point of where you are self-sustaining.
Right.
And then the review part, people read reviews on Amazon, even if they're not buying the book from Amazon. They read reviews on Amazon for everything, for products and things like that. They resonate with what other people have to say about stuff. And so if you are only focusing on your publishing and not thinking about your marketing, then you run the risk of your reviews either being in the sense of this book wasn't for me or this book is not what I expected because you spent all of your energy and all of your time on your publishing and your writing and you haven't really dialed in to the people that this book is for. Because I honestly don't believe that as long as you're writing your book well within reason and you did the steps needed, I do believe there's somebody out there for your book. However, it's a lot harder to find that person after you've written the book as
Mm.
opposed to knowing who they are at the beginning.
Okay.
And so when you do that, when you going back to your question, going back to how can you make this a brand, thinking about how do you make your book a brand, the aspects of your brand that you would include have to do with the person. So is your person somebody who values done for you services? Okay, well, then that's something you probably need to offer. Is this person somebody who is going to take a course and learn it on their own? Okay, well, you probably need to create the course and you probably need to pre-sell the course and get those people in as beta testers to make sure the course is doing what it needs to be doing.
Right.
Like people think, okay, and I'm not saying that to belittle experiences or anything like that, but we can overcomplicate things. And especially when it comes to business, especially when it comes to being an author, and when you
Hmm.
bring both of those together, we are full of, is this the right thing? Are people going to buy this? The way you can tell if people are going to buy it, you got to offer it. Like offer it up, make it a pre-sale. If people buy it, they're interested. If they don't buy it, then you got to check something. Like either it's the offer, either it's the way it was sold, either it was the audience. And that does all take testing. But if you have a business already for your before you write a book, then you have an advantage of knowing, okay, this is what's worked before. These are the type of people I attract. These are the type of people who might be interested in it. Now I
Hmm.
can package that into a book. If you don't already have a business beforehand and you're starting off with writing a book, I would say you want to at least do the research and start the process of interviewing people to see who would be interested in something like this, who does this really serve, and then get some clients. Because the thing about books is that it feels very permanent. So if you don't already have work, if you have not already worked with these people, and then you're creating a book that's supposed to show what you know, but you haven't really had that experience, it's going to show. And people are going to say, I don't really know if this works because it hasn't really been battle tested. It hasn't really been something that you've taken the time to check or test. Now, if it's you and you're getting the results, that's totally fine too. So maybe you have a structure you've done a couple of times and you've gotten results for yourself. That works as well. And so that's something with the pre-orders that I mentioned before. I did it for my first two books and then I've done it for every subsequent book and I've gotten better and better results and I've gotten client results. And so to the tune of like upwards of five figures in pre-orders. And with that, then it's like, okay, people trust you because you say, oh, in the book, this is what you do in the book. Okay, but then I actually just saw you do it on social media. Like people,
Right.
people start to see, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. So the
Mm,
person I was talking to earlier today, she said, yeah, like I know that I can trust to work with you because regardless of what life throws at you, you come back to books and you come back to showing your process and you come back to being consistent and like you may have challenges, but like I know that I can trust you because you've been doing the work. And so really documenting the process of what you're doing when it comes to your books, your brand is so important. And that's one thing. The mayor of New York, Mandami, his team is really good about doing is documenting things that are happening. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff that they're doing,
mm-mm.
but he's a new mayor, he's a millennial, and he's doing these different initiatives to basically help people feel like communities in New York, and then also some friendly competition between the different boroughs.
Okay.
And he cleared the deficit based upon taxing the rich and taxing people appropriately and things like that. And so one of the things that I'm noticing is that some of the stuff was already in place. Like some of the things that his team is sharing, they were already things. They just were not advertised. So
Hmm.
yeah. A lot of it is that you have to basically, from a marketing standpoint and also for publishing, you have to advertise the good stuff you're doing because people just don't know. People are busy. Life happens. Social media only shows folks like 2% of your content.
Right.
So you have to, one, not only rely on that, but also share the work that you're doing so that people say, oh, I didn't know you do that. Like, oh, you offer this service. Okay, well, okay, that makes sense. And now you wrote a book about offering that service. So like I can invest $20 in your book
Right.
versus $2,000 in your program if I don't know how well that you're doing stuff. But like if I invest that $20 and I can see, okay, you've helped this many people, you've helped get these people this result, or the case study you shared is a person just like me, or I have some commonalities with that person, then okay, I'm gonna be more willing to invest that 2,000
Hmm.
or even like 20,000. Like someone's gonna be more likely to invest that type of money with you
Right.
because they see that you are comprehensive and you know your stuff.
Agreed. Okay, so you've mentioned pre-order several times, and I know that's, your book that I'm reading, but in your opinion, what does a successful pre-order campaign actually look like, and why should authors care about pre-orders?
Yes. So a successful pre-order campaign looks like whatever you've decided to be successful. And this is going to be another, okay, this is not a direct answer, but it depends on what do you deem as success. So this isn't comparing yourself to other people. Like, oh, she got 20,000 pre-orders. Da, da, da. Okay, well, did she tell you what she had to do for those 20,000 pre-orders? Like, is it something you want to do? Is it in alignment with what you're willing to put the work in? Um, One thing I notice is that most authors focus on number of pre-orders or numbers of books sold versus profit, and I focus on income made as
Mm,
opposed to number of books sold. And so going back to the um, first pre-order I mentioned, where I said I did $1,400 in 6 weeks, that was only from 52 pre-orders. Like that's no shades. I mean, that was good for my first book, but like some people are making thousands of pre-orders, but when I look at the amount I got to keep, I was able to cover my publishing costs, and I had extra money to pay for household expenses from that because of the way that I structured it. And when you are hosting your pre-order on sites like Amazon or Ingram Spark, you're cutting into your profit because
hmm.
they are going to take the majority of it. You're also having to pay, um, of course, I still had to pay to get the books to me and things like that, but I was able to get that money up front as opposed to wait 2 months after the book came out in order to get paid.
Right.
So, which is what will happen if you host on Amazon. And so for me, success just looks like I need to pay to cover this book. That was my goal for the first pre-order. Then the next one, okay, I'm gonna level it up. So whatever your goal is, make sure it's something that actually is important to you because you can get so caught up in comparing yourself to others. So for me, for my success is always to make at least be 50 to 60% profitable. So that way I have a little extra wiggle room to do stuff. Because you also have incidentals. Like my first pre-order, I miscalculated the shipping and I had to pay an extra $200
Mm,
to ship the books. And so I had the money because I think it was at a 50 to somewhere in that 50 to 60% profit margin. So I felt comfortable. I'm like, okay, this isn't coming out of my kids' daycare fund. I can
right.
use the money that I made for the book. It's self-sustaining. That's always a measure for me. Is your book going to pay for itself before it's out? Like that's my goal when I work with authors. It's my goal for my own books, and it has happened each time for my books, and it over in abundance. Also, I look at the launch period and the launch process, and I think about, okay, is this something that built a buzz for my audience? And that's not necessarily a tangible result, but am I getting people reposting my stuff without me even asking? Am I getting people who are tagging other folks who might be interested in this? Am I increasing my audience? Because really, your book launch and your pre-order is an opportunity to increase your audience. Many authors assume that you have to already have this massive audience before your book is out, and they really neglect the what is the word? The opportunity to increase your audience with your book. Like this is the perfect time for people who didn't know who you were, who hadn't heard of you, to really build that buzz. And people always want to kind of ride the wave of like, oh yeah, okay, they have this book coming out. Like people get really excited about it. I liken it to when people announce they're having a baby, people get all excited. People you've never talked to before, or not never. Let me not say never. Well, no, actually, no, yeah, never. I've had
Uh-huh.
people who, like when you're pregnant, random people just come up to you, start talking to you, and tell you
Uh-huh.
their birth story. Girl, I didn't ask for that. Thank you, but okay. Like it's kind of the same with the book. Like
Yeah.
especially if it's something that people are interested in, and it's something that they know somebody who might be interested in, even
Mm-hmm.
if the book's not for them. Like I had like men tagging women on my post for my mom book. And then I've had other people who tagged folks on my pre-order book launch because, oh, you're an author. Hey, I saw this.
Right.
This lady's doing this. So um really seeing, okay, metrics for growth for your audience. So using that as a launch to grow your audience and not just doing a release, because many authors just say, oh, my book's out, go buy it, as opposed to really taking your readers on a journey over the course of weeks or months. Some people do years. I don't have the stamina currently for for a multi-year or year-long book launch, but some people do. And if you're traditionally published, that's typically the route that you're gonna have to do that. Um,
Really? I don't mean to cut you off, but why is it because they have so many that they have to work with? Why is it longer for traditional?
so I'm not an expert at traditional publishing, but I will say that the ones that I've seen, they've been upwards of 2 years. The longest I've seen is 2 years. And speculating, this is all speculatory, that maybe because they are like higher profile, they have bigger teams that can handle that type of
Mm,
launch. And the traditional publisher is not always going to help with your marketing either. So it really just depends on the scale. But I think also because they are writing the book during that process, it seems like they're writing the book
okay.
as well. That gives time for the actual publishing process to happen. And there's so many more steps that are incorporated with it because of their marketing is on a global scale.
Okay.
It's a bigger experience. So that's just my thoughts or assumption. I wouldn't be the best person to speak on why it's so long, but yeah, I've seen up to 2 years. And even some indie authors I've seen up to a year. And some of it is also because of pre-orders, because they want to have as much time to collect all these pre-orders. And
Right.
then that way, you have more sales essentially. So, but yeah, most smaller indie or self-published authors don't have the stamina to do a year-long book launch. I'm one of them currently because I have two kids that are little and work full time. So, yeah.
What do you think are some common mistakes authors make that end up costing them time, money, or unnecessary frustration?
Ooh, good question. How much time do we have? I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking. Um, I would say one of the biggest ones is thinking you have to do it all on your own and refusing to hire help.
Okay.
And when I say this, I'm speaking to both people who are strictly authors and also people who are multi-passionate, multi-hyphenate coaches, consultants, service providers, speakers. And I say that because on the one end of the spectrum, if you're an author, if you're a self-published author, you're being told you have to do everything by yourself. And or you assume that there's no way to make money to cover the cost of things.
Okay.
And you assume you have to follow all of the steps of traditional publishing, which is a separate misconception within itself. You assume that, oh, okay, well, this is how this big name person did it. I have to do it the exact same way. You don't. You just don't. That doesn't have to happen. You can still publish your book without following all those steps. And you should, because you don't have all the resources they have, and you also don't have the audience they have, and not in like a mean way, but you're just not you. If you're on the opposite end and you are someone who's in business, a business owner, you possibly are so used to doing everything yourself anyway
Mm,
because you're running everything in your business. If you don't have an assistant or if you have a VA, you still are doing a lot of the work yourself. You're the CEO, you're the CFO, you got all the titles without all the pay. Like you're doing all the steps already.
right.
But when you really take a step back, are you doing all of them as effectively or efficiently as you would like to?
Mm,
Probably not. And I'm guilty of this to myself, but when you're at a certain point, you're like, I gotta do what I gotta do. I gotta get it done until I can hire somebody in that position. And so when you think about it like that, you want to do that for as short as period as possible because that means you're blocking other things that are actually things that you're better at. So, for example, I have a virtual assistant and I'm in the process of delegating more to her because there's certain things that she's just better at it and it takes her less time and energy than it does me. And I
okay.
recognize that in her. And so there's a book I don't remember which book it's from, but the author is Mike Michalowicz and he's the author of Profit First. It's not in this book, the quote I'm about to tell you, but he's the author of Profit First, Clockwork, and a couple other books. And one thing he shares is that you want to focus on your queen bee role within your business. And so, and same thing if you're an author, your queen bee role is to write the book. That's really all you need to be doing. And that's really all, not all, but that's really mostly what traditionally published authors are doing is they're writing the book. Yes, they're going to do other stuff. But they also have people helping them. They have a publicist. They have somebody working with marketing, probably a department with marketing. They have more than just them. And so in a beehive, the queen bee is the one who's having the babies. That's her job. She's just having the babies. She's not going out and getting honey. She's having the babies. And then the worker bees are doing their job.
Right.
The other bees are going to get the honey or no, I'm sorry, the nectar. They're going to get the nectar to bring it back to the beehive so they can make honey. And then they've got the bees stirring. So everybody has their job. And if people don't do their job, then the whole hive basically does
Mm-hmm.
not work. And so in your system or structure of you creating your book, you want to make sure that you have people in place to do those other things because if you don't, you become overworked, you
Yep.
become resentful, you become overwhelmed, and then it just becomes not a fun process. Like if you're doing all the work from start to finish and then you're also not making any money, you're just like, I don't, the publishing is not for me. I don't want to continue to be an
Mm-hmm.
author. I don't want to advertise this book. And then you start to come off as being desperate and from a place of desperation in your content if you're using that to market and sell your books. When in actuality, you want it to feel refreshing. You want it to feel exciting.
Right.
You want to have that initial fervor of like, oh, I'm really excited about this book. Like, I know it's going to help these types of people and like you want to be refreshed. Now, I'm not saying if you hire someone like me that you're not going to be doing work because you will be doing work. There are things that
Right.
needs to happen, but it's a different structure of where you're more so the person who's like, okay, I actually like cover B instead of cover A. Can we make this tweak? I like that change. Or can we go back to this? Like you're not someone who's scouring the internet trying to find a cover designer. You're not asking in chat, I was gonna say chat rooms, Lord. You're not asking in Facebook groups or on threads, hey, do you have an editor recommendation? Because I don't know who I can trust. Like you already know that that process is handled for you. People have been selected for you, and you actually get to interact with them as opposed to having to find them, vet them, then work with them. And so it just it just makes the process easier. And if you're doing a pre-order, then you're getting paid at the same time. So like you're recovering your investment back, which feels a lot better than having to wait a year or two to make your
Right.
money. So
Yeah, that pre-order makes a difference.
it does. Yes, yes.
Beyond selling books, how can authors use their books to create well, we kind of discussed that. The question is, how can authors use their books to create new opportunities in business and speaking? But you touched on that a little bit earlier, especially like the point where you were saying specific chapters, you've known people to use specific chapters to create speaking engagements and things of that nature. So kind of doubling back on that though, as far as speaking engagements, can you tell people like how far they can go? Like I've seen people do um like workshops and things of that nature. Like, what's your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, a book is just a modality to convey information. It's an efficient modality to convey information. It's a battle-tested modality. We've had books for thousands of years. So it's something where people just kind of accept it as a part of our lives. But if you were to repackage that information and put it into a podcast episode or put it into a Facebook post or you mentioned a workshop, yes, I mean, if you know that your audience only needs to focus on this one strategy and that's the strategy you cover in that chapter, then yes, it's your content. You have the ability to rebrand it, to reframe it any kind of way. You can change the name. Yes, like it's nice. And then also if you package your book with it and say, oh, okay, if you need a summary of what we talked about today, chapter 13 in my book covers it, XYZ, got your high points. Of course, you're gonna give them takeaways just from an instructional design
Right.
standpoint, but you have another way to present the same information because people hearing it and workshopping it through with you might perceive it differently than if they're like in the comfort of their home or on an airplane reading your book as well with the same concept.
Yeah, most definitely. And I just kind of wanted to touch back on that again, even though we had discussed it a little bit earlier. So what encouragement would you give to the author who feels overwhelmed by everything that comes with publishing and marketing a book?
So if you're overwhelmed by publishing and marketing a book, I would say get help. That doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're getting help by hiring someone. It could mean that you're buying a book because there are tons of books out there that will help with these processes. It could look like finding a mentor. It could look like taking a course. I'm very much someone who believes that higher education is important, and that doesn't have to just mean with your like degrees, but taking certifications, taking courses, getting a better understanding. You don't know what you don't know. And so
Right.
part of the things that you could be struggling with could really be a simple 15-minute conversation with a mentor where you're just like, oh, okay, that's all. That's all I needed. Yes, that's all you need, and go forth and prosper. Like it doesn't it doesn't have to be a stressful process. I'm not saying you're never gonna be stressed, but it doesn't have to be where every single thing is stressful. It shouldn't
Right.
be where every single thing is stressful. You shouldn't be so stressed by writing, publishing, or marketing your book that you completely give up on it. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get to that point. So if you are struggling with it, I would say a few things. Get out of your own way. Understand that your book is for other people. It's not for you. I know it feels like it's for you, but other people are going to buy your book. And then get the help where you can. So whether that be a mentor, a coach, a consultant, whether it is buying a book that's on the topic, watching a YouTube video, there's so many resources out there right now, like
Or
at this in this day and age. However, I will say that hiring and or using the right help is important because every piece of advice about publishing and marketing is not going to be tailored to you. And I actually have a podcast episode um, about this because there's so much information out there, and especially with like AI, and people feel like Claude and Chatty just can tell them about their whole lives and their medical history and their financials and all that. There comes a time where you have to realize that all advice is not good advice. And so, yes, using a book, yes, using an AI resource is helpful. But when it comes to actually talking to a person who knows you, who understands what you're going through, who actually understands what you're not saying, because people tend to censor themselves unknowingly when they put information into like YouTube or AI model language learning models or language models. And so talking to a person, having a conversation with a person, having a meeting with a person who is a good fit for you
Hmm.
is going to be a more effective option than just reading a resource by yourself. However, if that's not financially an option or logistically not an option for you, then a book is a great resource. A YouTube video can be a great resource depending upon the source of it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Ashley, I want to thank you for taking the time out to sit down with us and give us your expertise today. Where can viewers connect with you and learn more about Shep Publishing House and the work you're doing to support authors?
Yeah, so I'm actually in the process of shifting to profitable publishing. And
Yay.
so you can find me on my new handle. Same
Okay.
great content, a different title. And so I will be at Profitable Publishing on all platforms. And then they can also reach out to me at profitablepublishing.com/contact and be able to book a call to see if it's a good fit or, slide in my DMs if you want to do that. I typically will not slide into yours and cold pitch you. That's not something I do. But if you have questions and you want to see what actually makes sense for you, then you can do that as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So basically, the information and the expertise you've shown today reminded us that successful book marketing doesn't begin on launch day. It begins with intentional planning, a clear strategy, and serving readers long before the book is released. Thank you again for sitting down with us, Ashley.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you are welcome. And to our Beyond the Page Media community, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this conversation with an author who may need this insight. Until next time, keep writing, keep rising, and remember, your story matters.